Okay, so I'm now at point six, which is downstream from that. Here we are. We're living in a cultural moment that is downstream from both of these positions, both the sacred position and the profane position. We have to let go, we have actually let go of myth, but we also haven't. Um, and you can see the popularity of myth if you look at something as basic as Star Wars or Star Trek. We've signed on to truth, but we also haven't, which you can see very clearly in the paradoxical positions, the approved contradictions, the cognitive dissonances that people hold on to. And no wonder we're panicky about where to look for answers to our questions about existence and creation and meaning and order, which are at the root of existential and ontological questions. Ontology here has to do with being, your basic ontic position. And Eliade warned us to understand where we were as members of the profane world. So he's writing, as I say, he's writing now, well, 70-ish, 60-ish years ago. Do what he will, he is an inheritor. This is on page 204. To acquire a world of his own, he has desacralized the world in which his ancestors lived. But to do so, he has been obliged to adopt the opposite of an earlier type of behavior, and that behavior is still emotionally present to him in one form or another, ready to be reactualized in his deepest being. On 204. So there is this is the argument about the myth of eternal return, is that we believe that there's still magic. It's somewhere, and the rhythms of the family are still enormously important to us. It's important to return to the family grouping, basically the family home, at Thanksgiving, at Christmas, at Easter, and New Year's, obviously. As difficult as it may be, as tiring as it may be, especially if the family is distributed. All these things mean that when you get together, what Eliade would be saying is that basically we understand we're missing something, and we migrate. We are, these are magnets. We migrate to these magnetic moments, which are rituals, and we feel about them that there's something we're missing there. We're not getting it. So we are an inheritor. So we've inherited the tradition of the sacred, but we don't really know how to act on it. So his belief is that it's not dead. It's still there. And we're going to keep hearing and seeing this notion that essentially the repressed are going to return, one way or another, and that narrative, that a counter narrative can be just as strong as a narrative can be, which we'll be coming to. And this is why Eliade is so important. In the same way that people would argue Freud is important, Marx is important. After all, if we live in fact and reality, which is what we say, why do we pay attention, for instance, to Hollywood? Because Hollywood is nothing if it isn't a myth machine, as has often been said about it. What is the reality? Why do we care about the completely fabricated lives we see in celebrity, whatever that is? Whether it's a Kardashian, or whether it's Beyonce, or whether it's Megan Thee Stallion, or Elon Musk. I mean, basically, these are wholesale creations that have really no basis in quote unquote reality, whatever that is for these people, and we'll certainly never be in touch with it. Our contact with people like this, if they actually exist, I don't think they do necessarily, because there's such wholesale constructions. But we're never going to meet them, and even if we do, they'll be on stage essentially, no matter where they are. Even if they're at the grocery store, and you happen to bump into Beyonce, she's going to be on stage as soon as you recognize her. She's going to be on stage anyway, because are these people ever allowed, part of the price that they pay for being these celebrities is of never being off stage ever in their lives, arguably, even when they're alone, because you can't allow that fiction to drop. So these are entirely fictional creations, and we only ever deal with them in terms of their fictional creations of self. and yet they apparently make meaning for us. What meaning? They might as well be on another planet or be dragons or witches. Really, what's the difference? If I say to you, Angelina Jolie is really a witch, people will go, "Oh, I believe it," because why not? I mean, she's powerful. I'm not saying witch in a bad way here. It's just one of those. It's like because the word witch has been retaken. She's in charge. She's powerful. She seems to do what she wants to do. She gets what she wants to do what she wants to do, presumably. Yeah. So, but of course we don't believe those things are real. Witches, dragons. That's not for real. But the Kardashians are real. Okay. And there's this whole concept that we have of killing time, that we're waiting for it to pass, for the next best thing to come along. This is part of the price for Eliade of living in history, in descriptive history, basically, linear history. A whole volume, he says on page 205, could well be written on the myths of modern man, on the mythologies camouflaged in the plays that he enjoys, the books that he reads, the cinema, the dream factory takes over and employs countless mythical motifs, the fight between hero and monster, initiatory combats and ordeals, paradigmatic figures and images, the maiden, the hero, the paradisical landscape, hell, and so on page 205. And so Eliade is so good at cracking open our myths. It's like, yeah, exactly, right. I mean, this is a perfect explanation. This is a perfect explanation for, say, the whole Marvel universe, which is just one big myth structure that we've made for ourselves. And people are like, oh, and they really care. They really are really. They can be very, very passionate about it because this is their new belief system, right? This is the new cosmology, or cosmogony. What Eliade is so good about here is identifying, partly because he's so upset about the loss or the desacralization of the world. He's so good at figuring out what it is we're doing in the profane world and why we no longer believe in fairy tales and in magic. Okay, have a look at the final points in this talk.